Virgo, what I'm about to tell you was not meant for you, which makes it exactly the kind of thing you need to hear. So, as always, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Okay, Virgo, like and subscribe. Subscribe if you're already leaning in. So, let's break this down. Every secret has a perimeter, a zone of protection, not walls. Walls are too obvious, too inviting of the specific curiosity that walls produce in people who encounter them. A perimeter is subtler. It is the management of approach, the careful steering of conversation away from certain coordinates. The mastery of redirect, the almost imperceptible subject change, the answer that is technically true and entirely misleading, the warmth deployed at exactly the moment warmth is most effective at preventing further inquiry. You have been managed, not maliciously, not with the cold precision of someone who views you as a threat to be neutralized, but with the particular, almost instinctive skill of someone who has been protecting a specific piece of information for long enough that the protection has become reflexive, automatic, a behavior pattern so well rehearsed it no longer feels like concealment, it feels like ordinary interaction. That is the most effective kind of concealment. The kind that doesn't know it's concealing anymore. The kind that has been running so long and so smoothly that the person doing it has, in some compartment of themselves, almost forgotten what they are not saying. Almost, not entirely. Because the body keeps the accounting even when the mind has stopped auditing. The body always keeps the accounting. What did they not want you to know? Sit with the question before the answer arrives, because the question itself is the first piece of information. The fact of the not wanting is as significant as the content of what was withheld. It tells you something about the stakes, about what this person believed the knowing would do to you, to them, to the arrangement between you, about what they calculated consciously or through the wordless arithmetic of fear would be lost if the information reached you. People do not go to the trouble of not wanting someone to know something unless the knowing matters, unless the knowing changes things, unless the knowing rearranges even slightly the balance of something they needed to remain arranged a particular way. The effort of the concealment is proportional to the cost of disclosure. And the effort here, the specific, sustained, carefully maintained effort of what has been kept from you, suggests a cost that this person judged as too high to pay voluntarily. They were wrong about the cost. But we will get to that. Ciphers. The oldest codes were not designed to be unbreakable. They were designed to be unbroken by the wrong reader, legible to someone with the key, opaque to someone without it. The sophistication of a cipher is not measured by how completely it hides its content, but by how perfectly it disguises the fact that there is content to hide. The best cipher looks like ordinary text, like nothing, like the absence of a message rather than the presence of one encoded. What you have been receiving from this person has been cipher, not noise, not the blank static of indifference or absence, encoded signal, information present, but scrambled, arranged in a pattern, designed to be received without being decoded. to communicate enough to maintain the relationship, enough to sustain your interest and your presence, enough to keep you in the perimeter without ever crossing into the territory that the cipher was protecting. Think about the moments that felt slightly off register, the responses that were warm but somehow adjacent to the question asked, the availability that appeared and withdrew on a rhythm you could never quite predict, the specific quality of certain interactions fully present in one dimension, noticeably absent in another, the feeling experienced but perhaps not named of talking to someone who was both there and elsewhere simultaneously, who was offering you something real while withholding something realer. That was the cipher running. You felt the encoding even if you couldn't read the plain text beneath it. Here is what happens when someone maintains a secret about you for a long time. They develop a relationship with the secret that is almost independent of their relationship with you. The secret becomes its own entity in their life, something they carry, something they are in conversation with, something that makes demands of them and shapes their behavior in ways you can observe only at the edges. Only in the places where the concealment creates visible distortion, where the effort of not saying produces a specific kind of pressure on what is being said. Pressure always leaves marks. You have seen the marks. In retrospect, perhaps you will be able to locate them with the precision that hindsight permits to go back through the catalog of interactions and find the precise moments where the pressure was highest, where the effort of concealment was most visible in the quality of the concealment itself, where something slightly overmanaged revealed, through its overmanagement, what was beneath it. The overmanaged moments. They are there, they were always there, filed in the part of you that notices things before you are ready to name them. The naming is approaching. Why now? Because secrets about people have a half-life in proportion to the intensity of the feeling they are protecting. Small secrets, secrets about inconsequential things, secrets that protect minor embarrassments or manageable preferences, those can be maintained indefinitely. They don't press. They sit in their compartment and stay there, inert, asking nothing of the person housing them. But secrets that protect large feelings, secrets that were installed not as a temporary measure, but as what seemed in the moment of their installation like the only viable long-term arrangement. Secrets that are not about what happened, but about what is still happening, what is ongoing, what is continuous, what has not resolved into the past tense but persists stubbornly in the present. Those secrets are not inert. They are alive. They generate pressure. They demand maintenance in proportion to their intensity. And the maintenance, the daily, unacknowledged, quietly exhausting work of not saying compounds over time into a debt that eventually requires settlement. The debt is coming due, not because you demanded payment, not because you did anything to accelerate the timeline, but because the arithmetic of sustained concealment reached its natural limit, because the compound interest of the unspoken finally exceeded what the account of this person's endurance can cover. The account is overdrawn. Something has to be disclosed. The specific content of what was not meant for you. Let's approach this sideways. The direct route is blocked by the same protection that blocked it before. Um, what does someone protect by not wanting you to know something? What does the not wanting serve? What is being preserved by the concealment that disclosure would disrupt? Power, sometimes. The asymmetry of information, the having of something you don't have, creates a specific kind of advantage in a dynamic, not always consciously exploited, but present. The person who knows something you don't occupies a different position in the relationship than they would occupy if the information were shared. They can calibrate their behavior with reference to a variable you don't know is in the equation. They can respond to your responses with the advantage of context you don't have. Distance, sometimes the information shared would require proximity, would require a kind of engagement with you that the current arrangement, comfortable, manageable, at a temperature this person can regulate, does not require. Keeping you unknowing keeps you at a distance that keeping you knowing would collapse. But most often, and this is the reading that has the most resonance in what surrounds this situation, vulnerability. The information not meant for you is information that, in the sharing, would expose this person in a way they have not been willing to be exposed, would require them to be seen in the place they are most undefended, would hand you something, a knowledge of them, a power over them, an intimacy with the truth of what they feel that they are not certain you would handle with the care it requires. They were protecting themselves from the risk of your response, not from you. From the version of you they feared encountering in the moment of disclosure, the version that might receive what they offered and find it insufficient cause to change anything. The version that might look at what they finally showed and look away. That fear was the real secret. And everything else, every cipher, every redirect, every carefully managed approach to the perimeter was built to protect the person carrying that fear from having to find out if it was justified. It wasn't justified. Or rather, the fear was real, which fears always are, but the thing it feared was not accurate. The version of you it was afraid of encountering is not the version of you that exists. The response it dreaded is not the response that waits on the other side of the disclosure. How do I know this? Because you are here, because you watched this, specifically this, on this specific day. Because something in you recognized the title, recognized the territory it was pointing at, recognized the person whose face appeared when the words landed and stayed, did not dismiss it, did not scroll past it with the comfortable indifference of someone who has no stake in the subject. Your presence here is its own kind of answer to the fear that drove the concealment. You are not indifferent to what is being hidden. You are not the person whose response was feared. You are someone who is paying attention, who has been paying attention, who recognized the cipher even without being able to read it, who noticed the perimeter even without being able to name what it was protecting. That quality of attention is exactly what the information, when it finally arrives, deserves. And the person who has been not wanting you to know on some level, below the level of their conscious fear, may be beginning to understand this, may be beginning to recalculate, to revise the estimate they made of your probable response, to consider that The version of you they feared is less accurate than the version of you that has been there all along, attentive and present and capable of receiving what they have been too afraid to offer. The decoding. When the cipher breaks and ciphers break, they always break. Time and pressure are sufficient to crack any encoding. Eventually, what reaches you will not arrive labeled, will not come with a header that says, "Here is the thing that was hidden. Here is what the not wanting you to know was protecting. Here is the plain text beneath the encoded surface." It will arrive embedded in something that looks like ordinary communication, in the specific quality of a pause, in a sentence that is said and then immediately qualified in a way that suggests the qualification was an afterthought, an instinctive protection applied half a second too late after the true statement had already escaped. In the eyes, which are the most unreliable encoders in the human system, which leak the plain text even when the voice is maintaining the cipher flawlessly. Watch the eyes and watch for the moment it will be brief, possibly deniable, possibly small enough that it could be explained away if you chose to explain it away, when the cipher slips, when the perimeter has a gap, when the carefully maintained distance collapses for just long enough to show you what was on the other side of it all along. That moment is the decoding. It may not look like revelation. It may look like an ordinary Tuesday, like a conversation that went slightly differently than usual, like a glance that lasted a fraction of a second longer than glances between two people at this distance are supposed to last, but you will know. The way you always know the things that matter, not through analysis, not through the accumulation of sufficient evidence for a logical conclusion, but through the part of you that has been keeping its own accounting this whole time. The part that noticed the cipher, that felt the perimeter, that registered in every interaction the specific weight of the thing that was not being said. That part will recognize the plain text the moment it surfaces. Even in the most ordinary Tuesday, even in the briefest gap in the most carefully maintained perimeter, what you do with the decoding, nothing immediately. This is the instruction, and it runs counter to every instinct a person has when they finally receive information that has been withheld from them. The instinct is to act on it, to name it, to close the distance between knowing and saying that you know, to end the asymmetry by making the knowing mutual, by letting the person who was not wanting you to know see that you know, that the cipher failed, that the perimeter was always a more permeable thing than it appeared. Resist that instinct, not forever, but for long enough to let the decoding settle fully, to let it move from the first register of recognition into the deeper register of understanding, long enough to feel the full weight of what you now know and decide from a place of actual steadiness rather than the activated energy of fresh revelation, what you want to do with it, what you want. Not what the situation seems to demand, not what the logic of the narrative suggests comes next, not what would be most satisfying in the short term, or most resolved feeling, or most clearly a response that demonstrates your awareness of what has been concealed, what you actually want from this person, from this situation. Given everything the decoding reveals, about what has been present beneath the surface of it all along. That wanting is the real information. The secret was theirs. The response is yours. And the response, whatever form it takes, whenever it arrives, however it is expressed, should come from the deepest, quietest, most unmanaged place in you. Not from the activated place, not from the part that has been waiting for this information and is now flooded with the specific, complicated relief of finally knowing, from the place that was always going to know what to do. That place has been waiting too. Let it speak when it's ready, not before